Michael, were you aware of those 52 new charges? How do you feel?
What happened with the kid?
How do you feel knowing she was sneaking this child into your home and hiding any evidence?
For the process,
and hiding any evidence of you being there so she could R.A.E. him.
50 times, Christina. Anything you want to say, every story has two sides.
Why would you accept Michael's proposal?
Michael, just why are you still with her? Anything you want to say?
She said she was going to take your family for millions and then be with this child after he graduated high school. And you're still going to be here to support her and hold her hand? Christina, why did you tell a child that if he couldn't get you pregnant, you would get a sperm donor? Because it was him or nobody. Well, you're married.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and welcome to Drop Dead Serious. I didn't know what to think when I saw the headline about a pretty young teacher from suburban Chicago who told the police that she was so pretty, people attacked her all the time. And that was because she'd just been arrested and charged with molesting and sexually assaulting one of her 14-year-old students. If Christina Formella had never said those words, and they're allegations at this point, I'm still dying to see the video of the interrogation where this allegedly happened. But if Christina Formella had allegedly never said those words, you and I might not know the name Christina Formella, because that's why headlines were launched about this young teacher who has now become this massive story. And when I say massive, I mean massive because of multiple alleged infractions. One day, Christina Formella was driving along with her husband, and they were pulled over by the police. And the police asked Christina to step out of the vehicle. She seemed genuinely flummoxed and couldn't understand why. And they suddenly arrested her. And she didn't tell her why. And down to the station she went in the back of the cruiser. And the video really started to tell the story when her knees came up and she began to weep in the back of the cruiser. Now, you and I, if we were put in the back of a cruiser and we had absolutely no reason to be in there, I'm not so sure that we'd put our knees up to our chests and weep. We'd be like incensed, demanding answers. Like, what is going on? Completely confused. Not Christina Formella. She didn't seem confused. She seemed genuinely scared AF. And that was just the beginning, because at the time she was about to be charged with like one instance of sex in the high school with this 14-year-old student of hers. And when they interviewed the student, whose mother had found his cell phone texts, allegedly with Christina Formella, his teacher and coach, he admitted to just one instance in a classroom, allegedly. But a little more investigation later, and according to prosecutors, hundreds, if not thousands of texts later, suddenly Christina Formella was charged with 50 plus instances of sexually assaulting this kid at the school, allegedly, during school hours, allegedly, even at her home that she shares with her fairly new husband. Yeah, married. She was 28 years old at the time of the alleged attacks. Now she's 30. And there is a unified front. They come to court hand in hand, that husband of hers and Christina. And it's all just a little shocking. The most recent hearing was on July 2nd. Let me go back. The instance of the arrest was March 15th. On June 17th, she was told, you're going to be on a GPS monitor. You lucky girl. You're getting out. You don't have to sit, in a jail cell awaiting trial. You get bail, but GPS monitor. And July 2nd, she went back to court because she did not like the conditions of the restrictive home monitoring. You're going to hear all about it and why I find it shocking, because jail cells suck. Being out in the open is great in any way you can get it. But Christina Formella did not like the restrictions on her home monitoring. So off to court she went, hand in hand with her husband. And Abby Escobar, who on TikTok is known as Abby Blabby, was there, rolling video, and caught the whole walk of shame from the vehicle all the way down this very long, embarrassing, and awkward walkway to the courthouse front doors. So I called Abby Blabby. I said, we've got to talk. Abby, oh my Lord. Like, it couldn't have gotten crazier, but it got crazier.
It did, yes. I feel like it keeps getting crazier.
So the last I saw, and tell me if there's been something since, but the last I saw, you are walking into court with Christina Formella and her husband, and you're sort of saying like, what the actual?
Yeah, yeah. Now, I was not planning on going that hard, but my adrenaline was high, and honestly, I was really surprised to see Michael walking beside her, holding her hand. So I think that made my adrenaline get a little bit higher. And then the questions just started spilling out all the way until she was in the door.
So talk to me about this, like the mood as you're walking along, because for the viewer on your TikTok, we're seeing this absolute stone face, stare straight ahead, both Christina and her husband, and some big guy, I think, who was trying to block your view.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, I think, don't quote me on this, but he might have been that family spokesperson that people are starting to talk about. At first, I was like, who is this guy? I wasn't sure if he was like a Temu bodyguard or what, but I think he's the family spokesperson.
So, but he sure wasn't talking in that video.
Well, when I was asking her questions, he turned around and said, "Please respect the process." That's all he said.
Huh. Yeah. Well, the process is you got charged. And
right?
That's a public process,
Absolutely. I mean, she didn't respect the process when she was doing what she was allegedly doing. So
allegedly, yeah.
Yeah. So I just kept asking questions.
So, okay, this appearance that I wasn't expecting it. I had originally covered the story when it was, I think, 2 or 3 charges, right? The boy, the 14-year-old alleged victim, said it had only happened once, and he went into great detail in the charging document with what happened in the classroom. Very explicit, but, the one time, and he swore up and down it was only the one time.
Right.
And then, shazam, all of a sudden there's 50 plus more charges that are added, and she's marching back into court because she wants something.
I could not believe the audacity. I mean, she's very lucky that the judge didn't agree to lock her up until the trial, and then just weeks after that hearing, when all of this new information comes out to the public, you're going to ask for the judge's conditions to be modified because you want to be in the comfort of your own home. Like, the audacity just absolutely blows my mind.
So they were walking into court stone-faced, staring straight ahead with, 50 some odd charges that are staring them down.
Yeah, and at the previous hearing, I was completely expecting Michael to be there with her and the family and everybody else. But after that June 17th hearing, I really didn't think that the family, especially the Formella family, right? I didn't think that they were going to continue supporting her the way that they did. But then to find out that there are now 55 total felony charges for, criminal sexual assault, the abuse, the solicitation of a minor and grooming, like all kinds of things. Because, before that, it was believed, like you said, to be an isolated incident. But then to find out all of these things and that it was happening over the course of like 2 years, and there's now all of these charges, and, they're continuing to support her, but she does just have this very stone cold look on her face. When she walks in, she almost looks kind of down. She will not make eye contact with anybody. And then even after she leaves the judge's stand, when she turns around, she still has that look on her face, just very flat, like almost tense. I noticed when she was walking up, I mean, you could almost see like in her neck, you could just see how tensed up she was.
How many other journalists were there with you? Like, how many other cameras were in her face?
Well, at the June 17th hearing or the July 2nd?
This latest one, when she had her top knot and the long straight hair with the black and the white outfit.
Yeah, so there were, maybe 4 or 5. Yeah. I think
That's
myself.
daunting, right? You're not in the public eye. It's weird. Suddenly
Yeah.
everybody's surrounding you with cameras and asking questions. And
Yeah.
so I don't know whether this is an accurate assessment, but when I watched the body cam, I looked at someone who genuinely seemed flummoxed and had no idea why she was being pulled out of the car by the police.
Right. And that's what I initially thought too, because the text messages that his mother found were from December of 2023. And now it's, mid-March 2025. So I'm like, she has no clue because that was almost a year and a half prior. But come to find out, she had to have known because the prosecutor said at that June 17th hearing that just a few days before her arrest, she was actually emailing the victim from a school computer because he had gotten into a fight at school and his cell phone got stolen in that fight. And that particular device had evidence of what was going on it. So you'd think she would have been terrified, like, oh my God, his cell phone is gone. I mean, of course she was telling him to delete everything, but you'd think she would have been a nervous wreck, but she still emailed him to ask about the fight and make sure he was okay. And then just a couple days after that, she's getting pulled over. So I think she had every idea
of course,
what was
they're
going
all
on.
allegations until they're proven in court. But
course.
did she say anything in that email about, hey, that phone that got taken in your fight, is it the phone with stuff with you and me? Or did she make a reference?
I don't know. They didn't mention that at the hearing. They just said that he had gotten into a fight. The phone was stolen. It said the device did have evidence of the sexual assault on it. She knew the phone was gone. That's why she chose to email him. But she said it was just to check on him and make sure he was okay. And nothing different was said. So I think that's all that the email was, but who knows?
When the court hearing started, after the walk of hell, like with you asking all those questions, and it's like, get me to those front doors. It had to be 100 yards.
Yeah.
Yikes. When the court hearing started, what did you learn that you didn't know was about to happen?
So many things. They had gone through cell phones, I think, of both Christina and the victim and whoever else. They said there were hundreds, if not thousands, of text messages and different things in there. They found photos she had sent the victim, allegedly sent the victim, several photos and videos, including one where she was masturbating to him and saying his name, and then asking for him to send the same thing in return.
Did he? Is the allegation that he did?
They didn't say otherwise. I mean, I would kind of assume that he did, but they didn't say either way. They
I
also
feel like
said that
one of those actions is so much more egregious than the other. I mean, it's bad when you're allegedly sending porn to a child, but then demanding that child perform.
Yes.
And, use the telecommunications airways to reciprocate, and there are additional charges for those kinds of things, but maybe we'll learn more if this goes to trial. But what else did they say about, I think there were like 1,000 or hundreds or thousands, they said. They never got specific, these prosecutors, but more messages than you and I could read in a day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They found a text message, and I actually wrote it down word for word what the prosecutor said. Let me find it here. She said, she even discussed with him wanting to have children, and she told him that if he couldn't be the father of her children, she would have no other choice than to choose a sperm donor because, in her words, it's you or nothing. Now imagine how her husband felt hearing that.
And yet he shows up, for court with her and holds her hand.
Yeah. And they found text messages where she told him that she was going to marry him and get millions from him and the family. And then after he graduated high school, they would be together. And I think that's why
the allegation is she'd marry the husband, this fancy Italian wedding, and then divorce him and take him for millions. And then she could be together with the boy after he graduates high school, which is what, in 2 more years?
No, he's going into his senior year right now.
Going to senior. Well, but this is a year and a half ago. So if she's
Yeah,
saying it back then.
So let me see.
I mean,
Even
enough so that it's like going to be a while till you get the cap and gown.
Yeah, when she sent that message, yes, yep.
Oof, can you imagine?
Yeah, so she obviously planned on that going on for quite a while.
Were there any other messages that really stood out to you that were read out? Like, because they haven't read all 1,000 or multiple thousands. They've just read a couple to, paint the picture for the judge enough to get this kind of a pretrial custody arrangement.
Yeah, so they talked about finding text messages between Christina and the victim where they discuss almost getting caught at school by a teacher, where they discuss almost getting caught by her own husband, because one of the times she was planning on sneaking him over to the house, Michael unexpectedly came home from work, so she had to push it back. Like, you'd think that would have scared her enough that she would have been like, oh my God, like, my husband
the boy
almost
wasn't allegedly over at the house yet, but Michael comes home early and she's got to be like, maybe don't come over now. It's not a good time.
Yes. And then Michael goes back to work and then come on over. And then she had him over. She wasn't even scared.
Allegedly?
Yeah. She wasn't even scared that he might come home and catch them in the act.
It's almost as though, if I'm looking at the psychology, if these allegations are true, that the brazenness built upon being successful for many months, in a row. Yeah. Ultimately, I've got this down. I figured it out. I'm invincible.
Yep. And they also found text messages where she allegedly, told him that a neighbor had just gotten busted recently for doing the same thing, and she's so scared. And there was a text message where she allegedly told the victim that Michael was actually having an affair with her best friend, and he was going to run off to Colorado to be with that best friend. Now, I personally don't believe any of that is true. They said that in order to gain complete control over the victim, she fabricated all of these stories along the way to make sure he wouldn't leave her.
Such a messy, set of facts. And again, they're all allegations at this point, but in the business of law, you call them bad facts if you're the defense attorney. Before I get to the hearing that was most recent, where you did the walk with her, the walk of shame, almost, she's getting peppered with all these questions and staring straight ahead in her fabulous outfit, black and white, with the long hair all tied up in the bun in the top.
Yeah, in the wide pants to hide her GPS monitor.
Oh, that's right. The GPS monitor would be under the wide pants.
Yeah,
good. Good observation. So, has she at least asserted any kind of defense? Like, have her attorney stood up in court and given some kind of an excuse or some kind of a hint of a defense so far?
Not that I've heard. I honestly don't know what their plan would be. I mean, because the digital footprint, according to the prosecutor, it sounds like it is huge. Tons of stuff. Almost 2 years. They said that she began grooming him just months after he started high school, his freshman year.
Ooh, it's going to be hard. If what they say is true and they've got hundreds, if not thousands, I wish they'd be more specific. There's such a difference between hundreds and thousands, but I get it. They speak in colloquial terms in court. It's never that precise, in these pretrial hearings, so I understand it. But if what they say is true, it's pretty hard to say he grabbed my phone and sent the texts himself, because wasn't that the original comment that she made to the police when they first interrogated her about this?
Yeah, she said that he had taken her phone, he put in her password, and he sent the messages to himself, pretending to be her. And, for a while there, I was like, it's possible.
One or two, maybe.
Yeah, but then come to,
let's just say 10. Let's just say 10, but not hundreds and thousands.
Right. And they allegedly found evidence that she was texting him while she was in Italy for her wedding.
Oh, at the wedding. I have to just show you, while we're talking, my mom is visiting, and she's got this brand new puppy dog.
Oh, my God. So
she just climbed up on my knee, and the camera's probably shook a little. So while the Atlas cam is in full board, this is the Kelty cam for a moment. She's a little sweetie. Hi, buddy. Sweet girl. Okay.
Oh my gosh, so
she can go
cute.
with the Atlas cam for a little bit. There you go, sweetheart. She's very, very tiny. So all right, back to Christina Formella. The comment that came from the family, I was actually, I got to be honest, I was quite surprised at this one. I'm going to read it. This is what they gave to People Magazine. It was a spokesperson for Christina Formella's family. This is what they said to People Magazine. I know you've probably seen this, but for the public. Quote, the public shaming of women accused of sexual misconduct reflects deeply embedded patterns of misogyny that have persisted across generations. Christina has become the latest target of this troubling phenomenon, subjected to relentless personal attacks and sexist scrutiny that ignore the legal process entirely. The statement went on to say, this isn't just a double standard, it's a spectacle. A public ritual that punishes women for not for what they've done, but for how they're perceived. Instead of discussing facts or law, public discourse fixates on Christina's appearance, her private life, even her lipstick, as if those details bear on guilt or innocence. That's not legal analysis, it's voyeurism, moral judgment, and cruelty, excused by a self-serving performance of concern for an alleged victim. So many things that I want to address there.
Yeah.
Let's start with this. I agree with them a little bit about one thing, and that is that oftentimes women who become defendants do receive a higher level of cruelty and scrutiny, like Karen Reed. You know, what did those police officers say in their text message? They talked about her butthole. They talked about her accent. They said there were horrible things that they called her a C word. They did all that. That was awful. And that is standard, right? You do see that a lot. In this particular case, I think they're misguided because if I'm not mistaken, it was Christina herself who started that, who got the headlines because the allegation is that she told police, people always just, attack me because I'm beautiful.
Right. Yep. So they're circling back to that. And, I think part of the reason why it's that way regarding women is because, women from a social standpoint, like we're expected to be kind and soft and gentle and motherly. So I think when you hear about a woman doing something like this, it's just absolutely shocking, especially a woman who seems to have everything. I mean, you sit here.
And the trend is also usually that women are attracted to older men, even if just by a year or two or 3 or 5, not 10 or 15 years younger to the point where they're children. It is rare. It's the Mary Kay Letourneau story just keeps coming back to mind endlessly. It was mystifying. She had all these children at home and a husband, and Vili Falau was in, like, I think he was 11 when she may have begun teaching him, and it just defies logic.
Right. I don't think they're focusing on the fact that she's good looking, but we hear more and more stories of these adult women sexually assaulting and abusing these boys. And honestly, a lot of them are very pretty. A lot of them are good looking.
I've seen it a lot. I've seen a lot of teachers over the years who are extraordinarily pretty, and they get caught up in the same kind of, criminal patterns that Christina Formella is facing right now as being alleged to have committed. The thing about Christina, though, is that I don't think you and I would be talking right now. I don't think the headlines would have just, gone nuclear if Christina hadn't allegedly said those words. People only attack me because I'm so pretty. It would have been just another one of those cases that, gets a headline and then goes away.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that statement really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, including myself.
Yeah, well, and guess what? You and I probably saw that statement around the same time. And it was when, I'm not going to say the word only in the way that people would find it offensive. I'm going to say it only with regard to numbers. When she was only facing 1 or 2 charges, that comment came out later when it was up to 50 plus, that the story got really big. But again, I'm not sure that people would have remembered to cover that story at the time she was hit with the multiple charges afterwards, had she not allegedly said these things to the police. I'm too pretty, and that's why I get bothered.
Right. Yeah, there's so much more into what makes this case particularly intriguing and as big as it is. It isn't obviously just because she's pretty. There's
been lots of those.
A lot of those, yeah, and a lot of them are married, and have kids. I think for me, what makes this so intriguing of a case is that she seemingly had everything, and when you have everything, then you have everything to lose. They got married on the Amalfi Coast in Italy, which I'm sure I'll never get to go to in my whole life, let alone get married there. And then they honeymooned in Paris, France. They had this very luxurious, extravagant life, it seemed. A ton of friends. They were bridesmaids and groomsmen and friends, weddings, and they just seemed to have a really amazing life. They just got married. Yeah, they just got married on June 22nd of 2024. So, they should have been celebrating their 1-year anniversary and maybe starting to, talk about, having a family or something. But instead, this is what's going on.
I know. I'm going to get back to what gives with going into court with her hand in hand with all these bad facts. Again, they're allegations, but in the business, they're called bad facts that you have to surmount as a defense attorney. But before I do that, I want to go back to this statement that the family gave, because there's something else to it that I think they neglect to mention. And that is that if Christina Formella were a man, it has been said over and over again that the punishment and the scrutiny against a man doing this to a young girl would be overwhelming, meaning people would say, if it was me, I'd have gotten out the shotgun. I'd have gone after him with the shotgun. If he came after my daughter like that, I'd have gunned him down in the school hallway and I'd have happily served life. It's very different. When Mary Kay Letourneau was, when her case was being adjudicated over and over again, people said, and some still do, oh, lucky kid. Whoa, if I was a boy in school and I got a teacher looking like that, I'd consider it a bonus. That's typically the reaction when it's a pretty teacher and a 14-year-old boy. Flip it, and it becomes the most sinister crime. It becomes Epstein. It becomes Epstein. So I think the family gets it wrong when they say that she's, subjected to an unreasonable level of scrutiny.
Yeah, and that is such a true statement. I make my TikTok videos, and a lot of the comments are men saying things like what you just said. Man, I wish she would have been my teacher. No, man, why didn't I have those teachers growing up? Oh, the kid's so lucky. I wish I was him, and all of this stuff. But you're right. If it was a man doing this to a girl, it would be completely different. And honestly, I think if this was a male who had done all of this to a teenage girl, I don't think he'd even be out. I think he would be sitting in jail waiting for his trial.
Right. I think you're right. It's Epstein. That's what Epstein did.
Yes.
He was an older man who went after high school girls. Now, he wasn't their teacher, but it's interesting you say that. When you think about all the comments that you've been getting, can you think of any comments that even dared to come close to the notion of a mother out there saying, wow, I mean, I wish that I had a good-looking teacher when I was in high school, right? Did you get any comments like that?
No, and actually I have made TikTok videos about male teachers that have done these types of things to girls, and there's never anything like that. There's nothing, girls aren't like, oh man, I wish he was my teacher when I was a high school girl. I mean, there's
well, you know what it goes back to, and you're younger, a heck of a lot younger than I am, but I remember in high school, the metric by which girls were judged was if they were sluts. But the metric by which boys were judged was whether they were studs. And it meant the exact same thing. Did you tag anybody? And then you're judged, accordingly. And I think there's a bit of that today. I think it's a lot less. But I still sense that most people look at young girls or teenage girls as being violated if it's somebody older. Not so much with a boy. And the truth is the psychology just does not bear that out. I mean, it is traumatic for a boy to be with an older woman. And it's not a score. It's not a score.
Right. And at one of the court hearings, I believe it was the June 17th one, the prosecutor said that this boy has been led to feel shame and guilt, and like all of this is his fault. And the fact that when the text messages were found and they first went to the police department and reported it, and he said, oh, no. It only happened the one time in December of 2023. I feel kind of like he had to admit that because the text messages
It's right there.
were pretty bold, right? But he didn't lay it all out at that point. Like, oh, yeah, this has been going on for 2 years. Like, I think he was trying to protect her. And
I
so
wonder that. Don't you tell me that. I couldn't figure out if he was trying to protect her, again, all allegations, or if he was so embarrassed and so ashamed, didn't want to get in trouble from his parents.
That might be it too. Absolutely. A little bit of both. Yeah.
I wondered.
But I do know that a lot of the information they have were based off of statements that he eventually told them, and then they were able to corroborate his statements with the text messages. So he did end up, according to the prosecutor, opening up and telling them all kinds of things. And they did say at this recent hearing that they do plan on speaking with him again.
Oof. Do you think his parents are going to allow it?
I don't know. I cannot even imagine how his mother feels. I have a teenage son. He's 18. I just...
Me too. I have an 18-year-old and I have an almost 20-year-old. And I think about it, in those terms, like, boy, oh boy, I think in, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, they were babies.
Yeah. Yep. And, that's part of the reason why I don't understand. Well, let me switch sides to the Formella family. This is part of the reason why I don't understand the Formella family continuing to support her, because the Formella mother, Kathy, I believe is her name, at one point Michael was a teenage boy. Yeah. So you would think that she would be like, oh my God, like what would I have done if one of Michael's teachers were doing this to him? I don't think she would have supported that teacher. But
here's something though. The Formellas put out that statement. What about Christina's family? Has there been boo from them?
I
assume that's her maiden name, right? Because, she's got this is her married name. She's got a maiden name. I have not heard a statement yet. Maybe I've just missed it.
I haven't either.
From her family. I would have expected this to be from her family, but not his.
Right. Yeah. No, I think they've kind of laid low as far as statements. I don't know if you saw it in my video or from the other night, but at the court hearing on July 2nd, either Christina's father or Michael's father told me to shut up when I said that the Formella family deserves better than him, or when I said the Formella family deserves better than her. One of the men, in an aggressive tone, told me to shut up, and then I turned and looked, and Christina's father was looking right at me, so I would assume it to be him, but they were all standing there together like one big family outside of the courtroom, and I just thought, what are you guys
perplexing doing? And I have been I've been wrong on slam dunk stories and cases before where the person was so incredibly, like Brian Koberger, guilty, right?
Yeah.
Before judgment. And then even after judgment, they were judged guilty. And I was all in on the guy being guilty and then discovered he wasn't. And so I am chastened in a way that I still want to believe what could possibly be the defense here.
Yeah.
Because like you said, there's just a mountain of digital.
Yeah.
And you can explain away 1 or 2 or 3 or 5, but it is really hard to explain away a year's or a year and a half or 2 years worth of communications. It's just too hard to plant. Yeah. Were there any other witnesses that can add to this case other than texts that have been discovered allegedly by the alleged victim's mother? Was there anything else that sort of bolsters the case for the prosecutors?
Yeah, so at the June 17th hearing, they found texts where Christina and the victim were discussing that at one of the times when he was over at her house, as he was either coming or going in the backyard, a neighbor apparently saw him and confronted Christina about it. Like, hey, why is this boy in your backyard? I don't know how she got out of it or if anybody pass it along to Michael, like, hey, I saw this kid walking through your backyard.
But, I wouldn't, as a neighbor, I wouldn't think anything of it. I'd think, oh, a student's coming over for tutoring, or, oh, a boy is coming over to say, can I cut the grass? I have a lawn mowing business, or, oh, yeah, I'm delivering papers. There might be some reason why a boy would come up to your door. The last thing you would think is, are you having sex with the lady inside?
Right, right. That is true. That is true. Yeah, and it was in the backyard. So you're right. She very well could have said, "Oh, well, we've been thinking about hiring somebody to cut the yard or something." Yeah, absolutely. I mean, depending on what time of the year it was, of course.
Right, right. So now let's skip ahead to the long walk of shame and the hearing. There's hubris, and then there's hubris. Christina has been told by a judge that she's got to wear an ankle monitor, and she's got to stay away from the places where this alleged victim lives, works, and even, I think, visits his friends, etc. And I think you mentioned earlier that Christina realized, oh heavens, I got to move out of my house because it's too close to some of those areas. Tell me a little bit about the perimeter itself and what she wanted to fight when she came back to court most recently.
Yeah, so the day that the judge ordered the GPS ankle monitor, he also ordered, the judge is a female, she also ordered that Christina have to stay 5,000 feet away from him. And then, like you said, his place of employment, his residence, the school. And then come to find out, the house that she shares with Michael is within 5,000 feet of where the victim works. So because of that, she had to pack her bags. She had to move out of the house, and she's been living with her parents. Well, they said that she would like to move back home to the comfort of her, her husband and all of her belongings. And so the defense filed this petition to try to get it modified.
How much? Like by how big? How big a perimeter?
From 5,000 feet down to 2,500. Now, to put that in perspective, 5,000 feet is already less than a mile. So they wanted to cut that. Yeah, they wanted to cut it down to like just under half a mile.
50% of what it was. What was the response from the prosecutors?
Well, the prosecutor was
F
like,
you?
she was like, you ordered this as a way to keep her out of jail. And, you even said that she is a threat to the victim. And the original judge back in March also thought she was a threat to the victim. So, of course, they argued that it should not be modified at all. And the judge was pretty quick to agree with that. So she told the defense, I am respectfully denying your motion. It's going to stay the way it is, 5,000 feet. So
were there any other details that came out in that court hearing?
No, not at that one. And then the next one's going to be on August 4th. So I don't know if more details will come out then. Because I do know that they're still going through more texts, and Snapchats and all of that stuff. So there very well may be more things brought to the surface at the August 4th one.
So listen, unified front walking in. That was like epic and heroic that you kept pace and kept the questions going. But once they got inside, did that unified front, continue? Like, I mean, did they sit together? But didn't she have to sit up at defense table? I mean, what happened?
No, so they all sit together towards the back. I think there are 8 rows in that courtroom, and they always sit like in row 7. I mean, they're pretty much in the back. They all sit together, and then they call her name, and she goes up to the bench, and they talk about whatever needs to be talked about, and then she turns around. And then they leave. And
so she doesn't have to sit at the defense table with her back to her family.
No, not while she waits. She sits in the chair right there with everybody else, and then they call her name, and then she goes up.
And does she sit right beside her husband, and are they still holding hands in court?
Yeah, so it was interesting. At this one, it was Randy Formella, Michael, Christina's mom, and as I turned around and looked, she was kind of turned towards her mom, and her mom was holding her hand. Yeah.
Thank goodness. Now at least we're hearing there's some support there from the parents, from her parents.
Yeah.
That side of the family.
Yep. And then after the hearing, like I said, they were all standing together right outside of the courtroom, like one big family in support of her.
I mean, it's hard to say, it's hard to know because, these children who are alleged victims of this kind of abuse, they're anonymous. So it's hard to know, but did you see a 14-year-old or a 16-year-old? I mean, I think he's about 15 and a half or 16 now. Did you see a teenager in there at any point?
Not at this one. I didn't see anything, any teen. Everybody was a grown adult from what I saw. And
did anyone seem to be, it's a bit of a parlor game, but did anyone seem to be sitting within, sort of whisper shot of the prosecutors. I'm just wondering if his mom or his dad or some representative of his family was there.
With the prosecutor? Mm-hmm. No, so they sit in a separate area. There's the room, there's the area of the room where everybody can sit. And then there's another one where all the attorneys sit together. And then there's where the judge is. So everything's kind of divided a little bit.
It didn't work as though there's on this side is Christina Formella's family support, and on that side is prosecutors and who's ever with the victim's side of things, the alleged victim's side of things. But it didn't appear that the boys' family members were there.
Nope, I didn't see them this time.
They may very well be trying to keep under the radar because it's bad enough. I'm sure what's the story with the boy? Are there whispers and rumors all over the school? Because kids aren't very good at keeping secrets.
No, everybody's talking about it. I've been contacted by so many Downers Grove South teachers, students, all kinds of people. Everybody is talking about this.
What'd they say to you when they contact you? What'd they say?
Just all kinds of stuff. I can't believe it. Holy cow, everybody's talking about this. Nobody saw it coming. She was very well liked. She was nice. She was outgoing. She was friendly. But then on the opposite side, I've gotten a lot of messages from people saying that she was stuck up. She was rude. She very clearly favored the boys and not the girls. That she was manipulative. That she was like an ass kisser. I mean, I've heard all kinds of stuff both ways.
Did you hear anybody saying, oh, yeah, I knew it all along, and let me tell you a couple other things? Like, did anybody have stories where they were in the know and wanted to share?
No, it sounds like everybody is in complete shock about this. Now, I had received a few messages from people probably a couple months ago stating that the victim got his cell phone stolen during a fight, and that's why he had to get a new one. But that's really all I've heard. Nobody has said that they knew or they had a feeling like this was going on. Nothing like that. And, it just makes me think, had the victim not gotten into that fight and gotten his cell phone stolen, the mom never would have had to have ordered him another one. So she never would have been linking that new phone to the iCloud. She never would have seen those text messages. And I bet nobody would have a clue who Christina Formella even was.
Well, the allegations are it's over 1.5 years ago. So, everybody might have thought, anybody who did know might have thought that's in the past and it is going to stay buried as a ghost. And I wonder how many teachers and kids are walking among us, and even grown adults who were kids at one point, who've got that ghost in their closet, that skeleton in their closet.
Who have gotten away with it because they just never got caught. Yeah.
I would dare say a lot more than the ones that have been caught.
I'm sure. Yeah. I think that's another thing that makes this case so intriguing, was that she almost got away with it.
Allegedly. But I will say this. It's just, I find it shocking because boys, especially that age, are braggadocious about sex. And if they can do something like that, even though it is abuse, they're so unlikely to keep it quiet. They're so unlikely not to have told someone who told someone who got in a fight with someone and told everyone. Right. And that doesn't seem to be the case. There's, from what your perspective is, that the rumor mill wasn't rampant with these, because these acts allegedly happened 45 times on school property during class time even.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me think, it makes me wonder if he truly believed that he loved her. And so maybe he chose not to say anything to anybody because he didn't want to risk her getting in trouble. I mean, maybe maybe he's heard about what happens to these women who get caught doing these things, and he didn't ever want that for her. They said that she manipulated him to the extreme and made him feel comfortable and made him feel like he was special, and that, he trusted her. And I just wonder if he felt like he loved her. And so maybe there was some sense that he needed to protect her and not risk anybody finding out. Because you're right. Usually teenage boys are like, hey, guess what I did, but.
Well, at least, you think about teenage girls, they at least tell their best friend. They've got to share it with someone. Yeah, and I can't imagine that boys are so different that they don't want to at least share, like, I am so freaked out by the weirdness of this.
Yeah.
I just kind of need to bounce it off you because I don't know if this is right or just great or just awful or so illegal or all the above or none of the
Right.
above. Am I special? Am I not? There's just all these questions that a kid,
Yeah.
by the way, a kid who's probably going through puberty and trying to figure out his body to start with.
Oh, absolutely.
Now he's got
Yeah.
all these very adult questions flying through his mind and no one to bounce it off of, except maybe
Right.
her, allegedly her. What about other evidence, like just other evidence that's corroborative or informative that supports whatever digital evidence they've got?
Yeah, so they did say that he was able to identify certain markings on her body. I actually have it written down somewhere here.
Yeah, I
well,
mean, you might see
yeah.
something on a leg, and that would be okay in shorts in
Yeah,
the gym
no,
because she's a
she-
soccer coach, but
Yeah, she had a spot on, I know, one of her butt cheeks, I think on her chest. So some private areas that he was able to properly identify, including a tattoo that, according to the prosecutor, when he mentioned this tattoo, the police allegedly said to him, well, we didn't know of any tattoos that she has. And he was like, well, she has it. And come to find out she did have that tattoo.
So, okay, I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here. If I'm a defense attorney, I'm gonna say, well, you know, Christina has a private life and she has an OnlyFans, or she has a Facebook, or she has an Instagram, or she's told her friends and her friends have told others, and it's a rumor about her tattoo on her left breast. You know, I would say that's
Right.
that's information that could have gotten out there that
course.
he could have somehow been privy to without having seen it personally. It's a long reach, but hey,
Absolutely.
we just saw Diddy get off.
Right. And, you know, in a criminal case, the prosecutor has to convince 12 people. The defense, they have to convince one.
Well, for a hung jury, but then, you know,
Well,
prosecutors will go back at it.
But
Yeah.
at least not to get a guilty verdict. You know, you have
Yeah.
to convince one person.
Right. And there's one born every day. Okay. So then the other thing I just wanted to ask about was the overall, like, the overall ramifications for this. What is if she's found guilty of all of it? What is she facing? Like, she's in her late 20s, I think.
No, she's in her 30s. I mean, I think she's
Yeah.
either 30 or 31. I
Okay.
think she's 30. But she faces up to 60 years if she's,
6-0.
yeah, yep, if found guilty, 60 years. So that would put her at 90. So essentially, she could spend the rest of her life in prison if she's found guilty.
And then you wonder, what kind of person is she? You know, in state, you know, sentencing, typically a lot of different permutations and combinations state to state, but you serve somewhere around 1/6 of your sentence. And if you're
Right.
good behavior, you get the Paris Hilton in one
Right.
day and out the next,
Right.
you know.
That's very
However,
true, especially in
Right,
Illinois.
I doubt that she would stay until 90, but at 60 years, woof, you're looking at, you know, 20 if you're not the best inmate. And,
Yeah.
you know, if you are the best inmate, 10, 15, if you really, I mean, that's 10, 15. And then you've got hearings, parole hearings, and those parents of the alleged victim would have to be on board
Yeah.
to make that a smoother process. So, you know, it's not a guarantee that you get
And
out.
it's not just that. You know, Christina Formella has a master's degree. She's an educator. She's lost her teaching license. So, I mean, essentially, she has no more career in education. I mean, if she goes to prison, no matter how many years she were to spend behind bars, I mean, her life would be completely different when she got out.
Ignorance is no excuse for breaking laws, right? But we know, based on, you know, alleged evidence that's been asserted in court, that there was this fear of being caught because it happened to someone else, and she knew it was wrong, and she knew that someone else was doing something wrong. So whatever the details that come out around that, I mean, if she's got a text saying, we got to be quiet because that guy has this charge and
Yeah.
he's going to prison. I mean, that's consciousness of guilt. And
Absolutely. Like what
then
she
all
told
of
him
it's
about the
bad.
neighbor.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Like what she told the victim about the neighbor getting caught. And, you know, the neighbor's facing all of these things now, and she allegedly told the victim that she was so scared, so she knew what could happen. But, she didn't care.
It's mind and then she's got master's degrees from university. It ain't like she's a dummy.
Right.
So it's confounding. It certainly gives us a lot to talk about, but I was very interested in the Formella statement because there was a lot of truth to it, but then a lot of just, I don't know, willful blindness, it felt like, where they put it out on the media for how dare you cover this when the first statement out there was the headline, I'm too beautiful. And again, I would like to see the actual quote. I'd like to see the video interview where she says that, because it can be misconstrued. But if it was said, that's on her. That would not be on anybody else for generating those headlines. This might have gone right under the radar and been another one of those teachers that we forget their names.
Absolutely.
Abby Blabby, you're such a great guest, and thank you for doing this. Come back again and let's talk.
Thank you.
August 4th is the next one, right?
Yep, and I'm going. I already requested the day off work.
But then you can come work and be on with me.
Yes.
Thanks for doing this. Again, big thanks to Abby Blabby for spending that time with me to talk about all the things that she's come to learn in the case against Christina Formella. You can find Abby Blabby on TikTok. Again, it's Abby Escobar, but she goes by Abby Blabby, and she is on this story. She'll join us again after the August 4th hearing. For now, though, I'm always so appreciative that you're watching. Thank you so much. And remember, the truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.